Yeah. Stay at work, stay alert, stay alive in this world of chaos. It's lay low. But check this out. If you don't know, just in case you've been living under a rock, P. Diddy sex trafficking has been charged with sex trafficking charges and other racketeering charges. And brief update, if just in case you didn't know or kind of fell off this news, he's appearing in court tomorrow for what I believe is his trial starts tomorrow, jury selection. So let's get into it.
We turn now to a major case that has dominated the headlines for months now. Jury selection in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs begins tomorrow. And I did want to give you just a little bit of a background on this, as the trial will start tomorrow, beginning with jury selection at a federal courthouse in Manhattan. Testimony will likely start the following week. The three-time Grammy winner was indicted last September and has been since held in a federal jail in Brooklyn after judges ruled that he would be a threat to intimidate witnesses and victims if released. The 17-page indictment against Combs accuses him of using employees of his...
That ain't a fair shake, though. That ain't a fair shake. Because he don't have no evidence or track record of, they haven't presented none. I don't think. Maybe they raised the concern in court that he has the means to get to witnesses, intimidate them, or whatever. I feel like it ain't a fair shake. John Gotti was out on trial when he was charged with numerous racketeering charges. And, he had many allegations of being suspected for murder. And he remained out on bond while he went through these proceedings. I think that P. Diddy is not getting a fair shake or his just due, or, just his right to be at home and prepare for trial. Like, he has a right to bond and prepare for trial. They have no evidence and nothing to stand on to say he intimidated witnesses. None has he displayed or shown the ability to intimidate witnesses. They have no proof that he ever intimidated a witness. So I feel like that he didn't get a fair shake with that. You being out on bond, that's an opportunity, or that's something, you know what I mean, that you're... Look at this. Prime example, right now, this after Diddy then been charged, Yellow Beezy is charged with capital murder, and they pushing for the death penalty. Diddy has no murder for hire case. Didn't nobody die in his case. Mo3 died in Yellow Beezy's case. Yellow Beezy is charged with the alleged murder for hire of Mo3. See the difference? P. Diddy, racketeering, sex trafficking. He should have been granted bond. He should have had the opportunity to make bond, just like everyone else. But anyway, you know what I mean? It's their judicial system. I have no say. I have no dog in this fight. But I'm just wanting to point that out.
Business endeavors, including record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits company, a marketing agency, a media company, and television network to facilitate his crimes through acts that included kidnapping, arson, and bribery. If convicted on all charges, which include racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transporting people across state lines to engage in prostitution, Combs faces a possible sentence of decades in prison. I do want to bring in criminal attorney Eric Faddis to speak more on this. And Eric, I appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Hey, Man, Tupac party up there having some Hennessy, smoking and pointing like, look at this motherfucker. He might be right there with Big sitting right next to each other, like, and Big party, through certain situations. Hey, even with the death, he probably didn't want to go out. His mom's, she said that they showed on the movie that she was like, I don't think it's a smart idea. Puff, he pushed the agenda for Biggie to be out in LA to promote his album. You know what I mean? Soul Train Awards. Biggie or Tupac do not need to promote no album. DMX didn't need to promote no. Various artists don't need to promote no album. Let people be in earshot and hear that certain artists have an album out. They're going to go find it. It's multiple artists that release albums without no promotion. Drake, for instance. They released the album just, hey, if you reading this now, it's too late. You know what I mean? They release albums even saying stuff like that, like this album release, it was released quietly. You know what I mean? This is for the fans. True fans are gonna seek out their favorite artists and go purchase their material. Biggie did not need to go to LA. He did not need to go on the press run. He was the biggest artist at that time. Big. The biggest artist to be, that was alive. Tupac was passed on. But Biggie definitely was predominant in the hip-hop scene. He did not need to go to LA to a dangerous territory to promote, be at nothing, I don't care, awards, whatever he was receiving, not even to receive a Grammy.
Be with you, Stephanie.
So this case is going to have a lot of bombshell testimony, no doubt. But I want to start with jury selection that's expected to begin tomorrow. When it comes to what an ideal juror is for the defense and for the prosecution, what are each side looking for a juror?
Yeah, Stephanie, I think the defense is going to look for people who are open to non-traditional lifestyles, who can receive evidence of what defense will sort of style as sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and not get put off and not rush to judgment. On the flip side, the prosecution is going to be looking for folks who are not going to be distracted by, the new shiny object over here, who are not going to get off course by any kind of circus the Diddy team may try to bring into this trial.
So, I mean, this has garnered much media attention. How does that factor in when it comes to selecting a jury? Because no doubt most people have heard of what is going on.
Totally. So it presents a significant problem. Here's the thing. The judge wants to find jurors who are fair and impartial and who have not already developed an opinion as to Diddy's guilt or innocence. Well, that's hard when every media outlet in the world has covered this case. They've likely already heard about it. And so what the judge is going to have to do is determine how much exposure the potential jurors have had to this Diddy saga and whether they can put that aside and simply base their verdict on what happens inside that courtroom and not everything that has gone on preceding that.
I also want to ask you this. One of Combs' attorney, and you mentioned this, the lifestyle of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. One of Combs' attorneys had mentioned, my client is not perfect, but everything that was done was involving consensual adults. There's a lot of evidence, particularly the one with the videotape of Sean Diddy Combs and his then girlfriend, Cassie, showing that he was punching, kicking, and then dragging her inside an LA hotel. How significant is that piece of evidence? The Combs attorneys, they didn't want this to be included. A judge ruled that it could be. So how pivotal is this particular piece of evidence?
The video of the Cassie Ventura assault can't be underestimated. So it's clearly inflammatory. Anyone who watches it, it evokes a feeling of, oh my gosh, I feel bad for this person. Right. When we talk about the legal relevance of it, I think it goes more towards the RICO charge and less towards the sex trafficking charge to show that Diddy engages in violence and threats of violence to silence people, to get his way. But of course, prosecutors will try to weave that video into the sex trafficking charges as Cassie Ventura is listed as victim number one in the sex trafficking count.
So let's talk about those charges, because obviously the prosecutors have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt some of these charges. What what do they have to present to actually indict Combs? Because a lot of this, is perhaps bad behavior, and no doubt his defense team is going to paint it as such. But how does it rise to the level of, let's say, racketeering and all these other charges?
Sure. So the first charge is racketeering. That is a law that was really developed to go after mafioso types, to go after crime families.
That's what I said. I said that earlier. I said that. Like, those charges were invented. I didn't say they were invented, but I use that comparison that he ain't getting the same. You know what? Let's just play it, man.
They're saying
it's just baffling to see that these mobsters was on trial for murder attempts and murders, and they still was granted the chance to make bond, in which they made bond because they had money like that. You know what I mean? They was the superstars back then. But P. Diddy has no murder charge. Yes, he has violence against Cassie, and yes, he has like violent attempts for his arson, blowing people, intimidation or whatever. But he was not granted the opportunity to make bail because they said the potential of him. But what about the potential of the mafia? They did this stuff uncannily and was granted bond. It's just crazy, man. It's just it's wicked.
Bad Boy Entertainment was a criminal enterprise, and that Diddy engaged in multiple acts of predicate offenses. Those are listed as arson, bribery, kidnapping, that kind of thing. And that all of that was done in relation to and perhaps in furtherance of that criminal enterprise. Second, they are charging 2 counts of human or sex trafficking by fraud, force, or coercion. That's essentially that a commercial sex act was committed by fraud, force, or coercion. The prosecution is going to talk about drugging and that sort of thing. Lastly, they're charging interstate, essentially like an interstate act where Diddy's team recruited a commercial sex worker, helped them transport that person across state lines for a commercial sex act. And so those are really the basics of the elements that the prosecution is going to seek to prove at trial.
We're going to hear from many witnesses, taking the stand. When you take a look at the scope of this trial, with jury selection beginning tomorrow and then likely testimony the following week, how long do you think that this trial is going to last?
I think some of the estimates that I've seen seem on the low end. I think this is going for weeks, if not months. This is a very involved indictment. It includes alleged offenses that span almost 2 decades, and there are going to be multiple.
Yeah, I see this being. Young Thug was what? His was like years. I feel like it was months or like years in the just because it's set for trial to start jury selection, things could happen where it prolongs or postpones this trial for its motions coming into play. They might, grant evidence. They might, throw evidence, certain things out that the state want to admit. You know what I mean? It's gonna be this is gonna be a long. This is probably one of the biggest. I would say. Yeah, I believe this is, to date, this is one of the biggest trials to date. Like, past and present. Who is bigger than Sean Puffy Combs that been on trial for things like this? Well, Bill Cosby. You know what I mean? I didn't even think about Bill, but Bill, I'm going to just say he's predominantly one of the biggest persons, people to be on trial.
Witnesses and law enforcement investigators and everything under the sun. The jury's going to hear about all of that, and then the defense also has a chance to put on their case. They're going to put on their witnesses and try to establish that, hey, these acts, although they might be unsavory in some folks' eyes, they were not non-consensual, and because of that, they were not criminal acts.
There's been also a lot of discussion about whether Sean Diddy Combs himself will take the stand. Defense teams often shy away from that, even if, someone is very keen on, sharing their perspective, their truth. Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think that he is not going to take the stand?
Yikes. I would absolutely advise him not to take the stand, in part because there's so much impeachment material that he would be confronted with while on the stand. Look at the Cassie video in and of itself. The prosecutor would walk through that in painstaking detail and say, hey, is this you, kicking your girlfriend in the stomach while she's on the ground? Is this you dragging her by her hair? Don't you understand that that could cause pain to somebody or cause them to be intimidated? Was that part of your design all along? All of these questions could be damning for Diddy, and I doubt that he would take the stand.
From your perspective as a criminal attorney, as we see this trial unfold, are you keeping a very close eye on anything in particular, whether it be certain witnesses, whether it be certain pieces of evidence? What are you really focusing on?
One thing that's really going to matter, I think, is how Cassie Ventura, victim one, presents on the stand. She is a superstar, and she has alleged that she was sex trafficked and also physically assaulted and everything else. If she could convey the emotional reality of what she says happened to the jury, make them feel what she felt in those moments, that is going to go a long way. On the other hand, if she comes off as kind of a disgruntled and jilted former ex-lover who has an axe to grind against Diddy, that is going to score points for the defense. And so really her testimony is going to be key in this trial.
So, do you expect her to be the first witness called to the stand, or do you think they're going to
Tutorial.
save that testimony to the very end?
I'm not sure that they want to just play their entire hand right out of the gate. I think you sort of build up to it. You set the stage. You probably have some law enforcement witnesses who will talk about what Bad Boy Entertainment is, the investigation into the activities of that organization, and how that sort of gave rise to Diddy's feeling powerful and like he's untouchable, and then go into the specific acts that are alleged against Diddy with respect to sex trafficking, physical abuse, and that kind of thing.
Eric, it's going to be very interesting to see what comes of it. This is out of a New York City courtroom, so no cameras allowed inside. But oftentimes we do get some of those photos prior to them closing the doors to the media. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes out of it. And no doubt, Eric, we're going to be speaking with you again. But we appreciate.
So they're going to have a lot of still paintings, like them oil-looking paintings when people were on trial or whatever. That's what they do in Manhattan. Man, it's I know Tupac is probably man, and Valletta. It's a lot of people that like can't see this day, and I wonder what they would say if they was here to witness this. And then the list, like the list, just oh my God, the list of individuals. If you can hear their comments, it would be golden. Just a opportunity. I don't know what they would say, but just the opportunity to hear them speak on this would be golden. And let me run down the list of some of the people that I'm referring to: Craig Mack, Black Rob. We have Mark Curry still. We heard. I shouldn't even name Mark Curry because he's. Let me start this list over. We have Craig Mack, Black Rob. Biggie, Tupac. I wonder what L.A. Reid say. Andre Harrell. It's the list just goes on. Heavy D. I think he was, you know what I mean. But it would be interesting just to see what Heavy D had to say. You know what I mean. But the list go on and on and on. A lot of people that's behind the scenes, A&Rs that that's not in the mainstream media that we don't know, that work the mechanics behind the scenes to make everything happen that we see that's on the screen. What would they have to say? Those, if they were given a chance for one-on-ones, you know what I mean? And in the way that social media is now, they could have a voice. They could find a platform to put out, you know what I mean, their experiences with P. Diddy. It'd just be interesting to see, you know what I mean, or hear. Just, and, some things probably, it might be subtle, and some things we'd probably be blindsided and surprised by. Because I know we were all surprised by that Cassie tape. It was horrifying. Like, that was wicked. You know what I mean? Diddy was all out of pocket. And then for him to get on there his phone and make that video apologizing, bro. It was not a good look. Like I just couldn't imagine doing my significant other like that, you know. And I've been with a few women in the past, and you know, they could. I have never put them in a position where I'm kicking them, and oh no, that was crazy, like dragging them back, and yeah, man. The jury selection, it's gonna be interesting after jury selection. I think the jury selection probably gonna take a week. So next week is, I think we're scheduled. We should be, my prediction after the jury selection, we should be on the ball around Thursday, Friday. You know what I mean? Monday for sure. After jury selection, they might adjourn it to Monday and just start the proceedings on Monday, a fresh week. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, man, hey, man, I'm out of here, man. Just to make y'all aware that the jury selection starts tomorrow, and I'll project that the trial will be starting Thursday or Friday. If they're not done with jury selection on Thursday or Friday, even if they is, I really project that the judge say, hey, we're close to the weekend. We might as well kickstart this thing Monday. So Monday, I will expect proceedings. The only thing is, news coverage is not allowed in the court, so we're going to have a lot of steel paintings and a lot of analysts speaking about the trial and what, you know, what key points was made. So Monday, we should be looking for some information. Monday evening.